In this video, we'll be showing you how to create a job in both SiteMetrix Grade and GradeMetrix. I'll also be showing you the different types of files we can import. To start off, you'll see New Job is grayed out by default. This will not allow a normal user to create a job or import files. If you have an operator or end user that you'd like to have the capability to do this, we can change it in the settings. We'll go to Settings, Authorization, and change New Job from Power User to User. Now when we exit out and go back into the menu, you'll see they have the capability to create a job now. When I go into New Job, the first thing you'll be asked is to give the project a name. This is the name the end user will see when opening a job, shown here. I'll give this job a name of test site. Press enter. If you want, you can give a description. This would be useful if you had jobs that were named almost the same, or if you had different localizations across one job. From here, I'll go next, and we'll start off with the particular localization file types we can accept. We have 3 different versions of SiteMetrix, and they export a different type of localization file. We accept all 3, but the most common type is going to be the local file exported from SiteMetrix Grade. We can natively accept a cal file, it's a text-based file, and also a CSV and a text file. I put an asterisk here because the file would have to include a north-east elevation along with the lat, long, and height. Multiple different third-party software applications have the ability to export these files, so you wouldn't have to reshoot the control points. You could just bring in these files and use the same localization. This is useful with a machine control fleet that is mixed. To import a particular file, just click on the import button here. On the left, we have some shortcuts to locations found on the device you're currently using. And by default, it'll open in the data folder. The data folder is where you can find all your current projects you have loaded into the device already. Under drives, you'll find the C drive of the device that you're currently using, and then also any drives you have plugged into the device, like this USB thumb drive. Traditionally, this is how most people import and export files, is using a thumb drive. So I'll click this drive. Both SiteMetrix Grade and GradeMetrix will automatically look for the particular file type we're trying to import. So if we look on my thumb drive, there's multiple different files, but it's only picking the .loc file. Now if I add a cal file to the thumb drive and go back to the software, you'll notice that populates as well. This will just make it easier for you to pick the appropriate file. For this demonstration, I'll pick the localization.loc and tell it to open. For now, I just want to concentrate on the localization file. I'll skip through the other types of file imports for now and cover them later in the video. If I hit next 3 times, it'll show the data that I imported in from the localization. You'll now see the northeast elevation of each point used in the localization. You'll also see the horizontal and vertical residuals of the imported localization. If the localization either had a horizontal or vertical point that was thrown out, that will also carry across, so it's not used in this localization. This is the case for the first 4 file types, the local, the LOC, the COT, and the cal. If importing a CSV or text and a point was thrown out in the initial localization, you'll have to manually do that in the software. I'll show you how to do that now. To start off, again, we'll create a new project. I'll give it a name and go next. Again, if we're using any of the first 4 files, we'd import them here. For a CSV or text type file, we just hit next 3 times. You'll see an import button in the lower left. We'll click that. And again, we'll tell it where the source file is located. This would be on my thumb drive. And again, it's only going to look for the particular type of file that we need to import, either CSV or text. Based off the name, I can tell that this file contains the lat, long, and height needed. So I'll import this one. I'll click on it and tell it to open. By default, when you create a new job, the CSV format will be named north, east, and elevation. And that's reflected in the preview. I know this file contains lat, long, and height, so I'll just need to change the format to name northeast elevation, lat, long, and height. Now you see the lat, long, and height columns populate. For most third-party software applications, degrees, minutes, seconds is the default format, but you'll have to change the geodetic height depending on the software that exported this data. It could be meters, or if in the United States, it could also be US feet or international. You can usually tell by looking at the data. You'll notice for point 3, I have an elevation of 500, and on point 4, I have an elevation of 502.35. We know these elevations are going to be based on feet or the project's units. So I can then look at the height and compare point 3, which is 335.8, and point 4, which is 336.5. Looking at those two, I can see this is only 1/8 difference, where these two are 2.3 feet. So I can safely assume that this height is based in meters. So I'll tell it OK. You'll now notice that the horizontal and vertical residuals are busted outside the normal 0.1 foot threshold. But if you remember, the original localization was not using the base. So to change this, I just highlight the base point and tell it to edit. And under use in solution, I'll tell it do not use, just like the original localization. And now when I tell it OK, you'll see my residuals come in the same way they were in the original localization. Also notice the icon has changed to reflect that we're not using it in the localization. Now that I'm done showing you all the ways to import a localization, we'll go back to the start and show you how to load the rest of the files. Now we're back to having the original localization loaded. We'll continue with the rest of the files. If using a projection like state plane or UTM, you'll generally have to load a geoid as well. We accept numerous types of geoid files, and they're loaded the same way by clicking on the import button, finding the device the geoid file is contained in, and selecting it and telling it to open. Generally, you'll be localizing a site and wouldn't be needing a geoid file. Horizontal shift is not used in the North American market, and only used in specific countries around the world. Linework is what the end user will see in the plan view. The accepted Linework file types are DWG and DXF. To load these, again, pick the device the file is located on, and pick the appropriate file, and tell it to open. Both guideline and survey topo are files created within the software itself, and generally aren't exported. I'll go next to import my surfaces. We do allow you to import multiple different types of surface files. The most common are going to be DXF, DWG, LandXMLs, and TIN. One thing to note about surface files is they do have to be tinned like you see in this image. You can't just import Linework in the surface area and expect it to turn into a surface. You'll have to convert this Linework into a surface in a CAD software. To import a surface, simply click Add, then select the drive the surface is located on, and finally pick the surface and tell it to open. Now that we've imported the surface, we have a couple other options we can go through. First, if we want to get cut fill from the surface, we want to tell it it's the design surface. This will be the default option. We can change the color that the surface shows up as in your cross-section and profile views, and also the line representing the final grade. We have the ability to load multiple different types of surfaces if you look under work type, like existing and warning. This will be covered in a separate video. Now that I have my surface imported, I'll just tell it to go next. My units of record is what units the project should be set at. And finally, if you want to run a particular projection like state plane, it can be done in georeference/state grid. Click on the button, the country that you're in, the projection format, and then finally the particular zone that you're in. If using a localization, simply use the default of UTM, UPS, and go next. Again, you'll see the imported localization data, and finally you can tell it to finish. Now you should see your line work in the plan view, and the surface in the cross-section and your profile views.